Hello and welcome to Louise Singleton Creations. In today's video I'll be showing you how effective the Resiners bubble removal machine is when it comes to achieving crystal clear results in your resin artwork. I'll be sharing useful information which I learnt along the way, and I'll be creating a beautiful layered resin Tealight holder and a vase for my sweet peas. If that all sounds interesting, stay tuned and enjoy the video. Right, before I could use my Resiners Airless bubble removal machine, I needed to mix up some resin, and I decided to use my J Diction resin. The only trouble with that decision was it's already quite a clear resin, and yeah, it's not really ever given me any problems. So what I did was I mixed up my part A and my part B very vigorously to create as many bubbles as I could so that we could demonstrate the machine effectively. Now, mixing the resin brings me to my first point. Now, resiners recommend that you only use 3 fluid ounces in your cup because during the vacuum process, the level of the resin will rise and they don't want your resin overflowing. However, I did have a try before this, and for this resin, the level didn't rise too much. It does depend on your resin. And so I kind of pushed this to the limits, and I used 5 fluid ounces just to see what would happen. So I did watch it very carefully just to make sure. And, it was my risk. Don't necessarily do more than 3 fluid ounces just because I did. It's probably best to follow their instructions, not mine, but I wanted to see. So I mixed up 5 fluid ounces or 150 millilitres. Another reason for the guideline is because if your resin is too deep and it's sat for a long time in that chamber, because it can be up to 9 minutes, the exothermic reaction could start and it could overheat. So that is another reason for why not to use too much. So once my 5 fluid ounces of resin was thoroughly mixed and very bubbly, it was time to put it into the chamber of the machine. And then it's just a case of popping the lid on, making sure that the seal on the side is closed. It's very important that that is closed. When it is finished, you can open it and it will let the air back into the chamber, so you can take the lid off. But at this stage, it needs to be firmly closed. Then plug in the power cord, and if you're in the UK, you will need an adapter for that. Then just click the on button, and then on the mode button on the left, you can press it once for 5 minutes or twice for 9 minutes. On the right, you have a pause button in case those bubbles suddenly start coming up too high. So those are your buttons. It's very simple. Let's have a look. So I have sped this up because it was in there for 9 minutes, but you'll be able to see really easily how this works. It starts to get clear from the bottom, and gradually that clarity moves all the way up until it's completely clear. I did find that it has some bubbles left over at the top, that are stubborn ones that didn't want to go, but once I released the silicone button on the side and let the air back in, those leftover bubbles mostly popped. So yeah, if it looks like it's still got gas in, don't worry. Once you reintroduce air into the chamber, they suddenly disappear like magic, and you will see that in a moment. So there we are. It's just got a few coming up to the top, and then it will be ready. And just so you know, this is what it sounds like. It really isn't too loud at all. So after it had had 9 minutes, it was time to take off the lid and have a look. So I'm releasing the silicone button at the side, and that lets the air back into the chamber because it sucked it all out, and now you need to let it all back in. And look, see how it relaxes. I think it looks like it's breathing a sigh of relief. So let's take it out and have a look. Right then, so as you can see, it's crystal clear, and at the top there's one or two tiny bubbles that just didn't want to pop, so I just took a spray of isopropyl alcohol just for those couple of bubbles, and that got rid of those. So yeah, I was very, very happy with the results. Right, I decided to use my vase mould for this first lot of resin. I'll put a link in the description. I think it was from Amazon. And I'm just keeping it clear. If I had decided to use pigment, I would have mixed in the pigment before putting it into the bubble removing machine, because obviously by stirring in the pigment, you're adding more bubbles. So you don't really want to do that afterwards. You will find it might take a bit longer because the pigment will thicken the resin. This year I'm growing sweet peas in my garden and I really love them, but it does produce a lot of flowers, so I needed extra vases, and this vase is just perfect. Just the right size for sweet peas. So anyway, I'm giving it a little bit of a squeeze around the bottom just in case there were any pockets of air, because you can remove all the bubbles in the resin, but it doesn't stop you from getting pockets of air trapped in there as you're adding it. So, just be mindful of that. Right then, for the next project, I mixed some resin just in the same way as before, and this time I'm making my Tealight holder in my brand new mould from Temu. So it's going to be layered, and my first layer, as you can see, obviously, is clear. I wanted to get the effect of the clear at the top, and then the next layer will be coloured, and it forms a really amazing effect if you leave the top bit clear. You'll see what I mean when we've demolded it. But yeah, that's what I wanted, clear first. So I'm going to zip through this process very quickly, but in reality, there were 4 hours of curing time between each layer. You don't need to wait for it to be fully cured, just firm so that the next layer doesn't sink through the previous layer. Right, my next colour, I think it was called Mermaid Shimmer. Yeah, I'm rubbish at remembering names of pigments. They're all from Laura's Art Corner, and what I will do is I will put the names up on the screen when I've gone to have a look at the tubs because I can't think at the moment. But this pigment is just stunning. You get kind of 2 shades of blue in there, and oh yeah, I love this one. I think it's one of my favourite pigments. 4 hours later, I added a layer of clear because I wanted something very clear in there so that we could demonstrate, the effectiveness of the machine that I'm showing you today. So yeah, I needed a clear layer in there, but also because the next layer is going to be glittery, and if you have the clear layer and then glitter underneath it, it forms a really, really interesting effect. So yeah, that's another reason. So now for the glittery layer, I think actually it's not gold, it's champagne that is called. I'm not sure, I will double check. But yeah, I mixed it all in and I put it in just in the same way. And I was so shocked, I didn't quite realise just how much resin this mould was going to take. But yeah, got there in the end. So after the glitter layer, we have another layer of the Mermaid Shimmer. And then finally, we have the white gold mica powder, which I love as well. I love all of these pigments. And like I say, they're all from Laura's Art Corner. Right then, both of them are fully cured and it's time for demolding. Let's have a look at the vase first. Right, I've used that vase mould a lot of times, so the finished result is a bit duller than it would have been if the mould was brand new, and there's a couple of marks on there. But anyway, the clarity of the resin, wow, what do you think? Absolutely flawless. So I am so glad I got this machine. It's so easy to use and it takes up a fraction of the space that my vacuum chamber takes. Now, I'm not going to lie, this was hard to get out the mould, so that's why I didn't film the demoulding. But with a lot of soap and water, I got there in the end. But look at that clear stripe. And as I turn it, you'll see the effect you get from having the glitter underneath. It's quite magical. Do you see what I mean? I love it. And the top clear bit, you can't actually tell that it's clear with the blue showing through it, but it does make a big difference. It's hard to explain how, but it does have quite a magical effect. It kind of gives it more depth somehow. But yeah, I'm thoroughly chuffed to bits with the finished result of this Tealight holder. So in conclusion, what do I think of the Resiners bubble removal machine? Well, I'm really happy with the handiness of it. You know, the way you can just keep it really handy on your desk and it doesn't take up lots of space. As I mentioned, I do have a vacuum chamber and the pump that goes with it, and it takes up a lot of space. What could be improved? Well, I think it would be better if you could fit more in there. It's a very small amount of resin that you can do in one go, and I think that's the only drawback. So I would recommend this for someone who only does small projects like jewellery or something I've done today. But yeah, if you do very big projects, I would recommend a vacuum chamber for that. The other drawback I would say is that because it takes up to 9 minutes to take all the bubbles out of your resin, you are losing your working time. So that is another thing to think about. But other than that, yeah, I love it. I'm really happy with it. And like I said already, I'm glad I've got it now because I know I will be using it a lot. Well, we've come to the end of the video. It was a short one this week, but I hope it was useful to you. All the links and discount codes will be in the video description, so be sure to go and check those out if you're interested in purchasing the Resiners bubble removal machine. And I will see you again next week. Thank you for watching and bye for now.